Buenas noches. Vengo como emisario del equipo Stones and Serpents. Sean todos bienvenidos. Si es primera vez que estás acá, te cuento. En 2025, un grupo de documentalistas y artistas comienzan el rodaje de un documental y expedición a través del mar Mediterráneo. Este proyecto en este momento se encuentra en plena exploración y rodaje. Lo que estás viendo ahora funciona como una expansión del universo de nuestro proyecto documental, con intención de generar instancias informativas previas a nuestro estreno. Hace casi un año, como proceso creativo y recreativo, el equipo comenzó un registro de sus propios sueños. Lo que comenzó como un pasatiempo se transformó en una práctica cada vez más recurrente de los miembros de todas las áreas de nuestro proyecto. Para algunos de nosotros esto ha sido clave para mantener una hebra muy particular en torno a este proceso de creación y documentación. Fue inmensa nuestra sorpresa cuando en una de nuestras reuniones en terreno con el doctor Ammon Hillman pudimos acceder a textos que mencionaban el Incubation en griego antiguo o la Incubación en español. Sin duda el terreno onírico comenzó a ser parte de conversaciones diarias del equipo de filmación y producción. Algunos registros fueron sincrónicos y otros perturbadores. A continuación les presentamos el volumen 3 de nuestra serie, donde este es solo uno de los temas que desarrollaremos junto al Dr. Ammon. Bienvenidos a History is Inquiry. Okay, Ammon. So when we talk about the Mithraic liturgy. What are we talking about?
What are we talking about with the Mithraic liturgy? You see, that's a great question. It's just an ancient text that somebody has labeled that. It's a magic text of Christians doing Christian stuff, and it's absolutely Christing gorgeous. It has a Christing in it and all of the born-again process, manufacture of the drugs, the application of the drugs, the Christing that will allow us to see the invisible. That's what the Mithraic liturgy is.
So I remember it was from 1 year or 2 years ago that you made this video about it. That was the first time for me when I heard about the Mithraic liturgy, to be honest. And I remember you showed in your channel in Lady Babylon, you showed the video of Carl Jung talking about it, and then for me it was like, I've heard about Carl Jung before, not very into it, to be honest. Now I'm a bit more, but could you elaborate why did you show that, and what is the connection with the Mithraic liturgy and this Carl Jung incident that you showed in your channel?
Yes. So Carl Jung, he was in the way when the liturgy entered the atmosphere. So the liturgy is written down in the collection of works called the Greek Magical Papyri. And it's very poorly translated, as Dr. John Scarborough would, who's one of the translators and my mentor, would tell you right up top. The problem is the text is very, very difficult. It's esoteric. It has to do with sciences that all of us are not exposed to in ancient Greek. So it's difficult. It's got a lot of drugs, got a lot of formulae, a lot of different prescriptions for activities that will bring the mystery by these Christians. And when I say Christians, I mean people who are Christing, right? These are the people who are following the mystery, who are Christing. So this liturgy comes to us in Greek.
Well, the question actually, more than a question, is more about that I remembered when you talked about it. So I'm referring to the time you showed Dr. Carl Jung talking about it.
We had a patient in the ward. He was quiet but completely dissociated, schizophrenic. And he was in the clinic already for over 20 years. He had come into the clinic, as a matter of fact, being a young man, a little clerk, and did no particular education. And once I came into the ward, and he was obviously excited and called to me, took me by the lapel of my coat and led me to the window and said, "Doctor, now you will see. Now look at it. Look up at the sun and see how it moves. See, you must move your head too, like this, and then you will see the follows of the sun. And, you know, that's the origin of the wind. And you see how the sun moves as you move your head from one side to the other." Now, of course, I didn't understand it at all. I thought, there you are, he's just crazy. But that case remained in my mind. And 4 years later, I came across a paper written by the German historian Dietrich, who had dealt with the so-called Midrash liturgy, a part of the great Parisian sorcerer Papyrus. And there he produced a part of the so-called Midrash liturgy. Namely, it is said there, after the second prayer thou wilt see how the disk of the sun unfolds. And you will see hanging down from it the tube, the origin of the wind. And when you move thy face and face to the regions of the east, it will move there. And if you move your face to the region of the west, it will follow you. And instantly.
But how could you be sure that your patient wasn't unconsciously recalling something that somebody had told him?
Oh no, quite out of question, because that thing was not known. It was in a magic papyrus in Paris, and it wasn't even published. It was only published 4 years later after I had observed it with my patient.
And this you felt proved that there was an unconscious which was something more than personal.
Oh, well, that was not a proof to me, but it was a hint. And I took the hint.
The Mithraic liturgy interacted with Carl Jung. It came to him in the form of a revelation of a schizophrenic patient. Oh, Jung said he was nuts. But this kid described for Jung a section of revelations from the Mithraic liturgy. Remember, the liturgy is there to open your eyes. It's there to give you a vision of the aoratos, that which is invisible, the unseen reality. And this schizophrenic patient of Carl Jung was sitting there looking into this vision, very specific description, before the Mithraic liturgy had ever been discovered or rediscovered. And when it was rediscovered, Jung was associated with the people who rediscovered it. And to his surprise, the schizophrenic's visions were a reality, that they were connected, and that Jung had no problem with embracing that and allowing that to drive what his red book was all about. It's gorgeous magic. Absolutely gorgeous magic. Yeah. I don't remember if we talked about that, but I do remember talking about the Magus and Abammon and bringing you the seal that was in that new book of Jung's, right, which is his title of it. Did we look at the depiction of time and space that Jung has in there with the little tiny phalluses and the cups? You see, Jung was so close to the magic that he was able to access things like these texts that were just drawn out of time itself, these magical papyri. And his close connection is what drove that image of the Magus that really is the heart of the Red Book. It's there specifically that Jung puts his seal upon the work. And again, if you don't understand what that is, it's because you're not privy to those magical traditions. The 20th century German classical philologists were uncovering, exposing just, oh God, in the 1920s and 30s, 10s, 20s, and 30s, the German scholarship, classical scholarship, was phenomenal. And all of those old esoteric texts were edited by people that were functioning within the orbit of Jung. And that gorgeous dedication to those texts brought the Renaissance in Jung's own mind. And you can see it when you see these old films of Jung talking about his experience with this particular schizophrenic kid. You can see him making the connections that ultimately would drive the Magus. I'm sorry, I forgot the tower. It's too much of that leaf.
Hey, that was perfect. Okay, Ammon, so we'll skip on topic. And now I want to ask you, because when we, at the beginning of this project, 1 year ago, we started to record all of our dreams, not because we didn't even had our first meeting, and we were already doing it because it was like a joke for us, to be honest. I mean, I was recording my dreams because I was dreaming about everything related with the project, you know, with Stones and Serpents. So I was all the time dreaming some stuff, and I was recording it because when I was younger, like when I was like 15 or 16, I used to be, I like to do that, you know, like to record my dreams and whatever. So I started again, and then I told the crew, and the crew started to do it like at the same time we started with the project. And then when we had the first formal meeting, and we were in Malta, I don't know if you remember, I told you about this at the end of our conversation, and I told you that we were recording our dreams, and I remember you told us, keep doing that, because, you know, they were doing that, and it was mandatory to keep track of your dreams in antiquity. So what you meant about that?
it was mandatory for the priests and priestesses to write down all of the dreams that are experienced within the temple sacred precinct. So what they would do is they would have people perform incubations. This is all over the Mediterranean. And it's not just Greek, it's all over. But the idea is that you would enter into a sleep state in order to communicate with the god. So you can enter a mystery and you can be initiated by the god who will speak to you, who will interact with you, who will show you things, who will take you places. You can do that in a mystery operation, or you can do it in a dream. So, in antiquity, on the Greek side, the language gives us kind of a world of dreams that is prophetic. That we have lots of authors who talk about, well, what's the origin really of divine vision? Where does it come from? Its core must be in the dream state. So you get these physicists who will map out, who will say, yeah, the power to dream is the original oracular power that all humans have naturally. Unfortunately, that power can be muted. So in order to maintain a connection with the divine, we need to establish oracles who themselves will be those receptacles for the vision. We don't have to dream it anymore, as is our base technology, right? We can harvest the vision through the oracles. And that's exactly what they're doing in the initiation of the mysteries, which it says in the PGM, in the Christing section, that's the whole process to make that invisible visible right now. So when you go back to the basic method of dreaming, you can be treated in a temple then by a priest or priestess in an incubation where you sleep, you're given drugs, you sleep during the night, and you encounter visions. You then take those visions and you give them to the priest to then determine exactly what it is that, what ails you, what's making you sick. They can tell. What's making you sick? What was the cure that was provided? The God who dwells in the temple, that daimon, that power, has the ability to tell you both what you suffer from and what will cure you. So those elements are a part of your dream. And the priest is there to sit there and kind of interview you and pick out exactly what it was that was given in the dream for you to be able to do. So dreaming and speaking to gods and health are all one operation.
And just Ammon, as a golden nugget, what does the incubation like? It has Greek root, the word, the actual word about incubation when we are talking about dreams.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. What language is producing this? It's Greek that's producing this. And the word in Greek is enhupnion, right? It's the combination of the hupnos, the sleep, that state itself, right? With just a little prefix that's going to say, hey, we're going to put you in this state. You're going to be in this state. So incubation comes, that's the Latin. Oh God, those hut-dwelling bastards tried to, they had to have their way of saying it too, right? Hey, if you want to exercise someone, you've got to be involved in these incubations, because you're never going to be able to get to the stage of diagnosis without vision, right? Vision is awareness and understanding. So for you to find your own diagnosis, you have to be able to produce that vision. Some practitioners did it with dreams, and some practitioners did it in states of ecstasy that the PGM is all about and talks about. You'll be able to reproduce this meter, this poetry, with the correct music. And there's even a term for it in the PGM. The music is considered a relaxed tone. So there's a lot of tech here going on in the cult that it's very difficult to appreciate the whole thing.
Well, going into that topic, the cult, the last episodes we've been talking about something like everything about the cult and oracles and how they were being made and trained. But we left. I remember I asked you a question, and at the end you told me you don't have to forget that the priestess is providing her own fluids. So, just in simple words, what that will mean? What fluids to who? What are we talking about when we are talking about the fluids of the oracle or the priestess? What kind of fluids?
Yeah, all kinds of fluids. So all of those bodily fluids that you can produce, those are used within the rite. Now you can find this in the medical text where they discuss the use of these fluids, or you can find it in the poetry where it will make reference to the drugs, the plants that are used in creating the proper vessel for the fluids. You can see it there. Or you can see it in the texts that document the history of the cult. And the best example is the apocryphal text of early Christian, that is Christing worship, when it was taken over by Jesus, the rite. His variation was added to the rite. At that time, you see the emergence of this communion, a sexual communion that is specifically the seed. Both men and women produce seed. A priest or a priestess, a son of God, or a priestess can produce seed. And that seed is their vital fluid. It's different from every other fluid. It's the vital fluid. So you see this expressed in the Greek very early on, just very simply, as the blood and flesh. When you administer to me your blood and your flesh, you are giving me the right. You are the cup from which I am drinking in order to receive the vision. So you see it in these texts like the Acts of Philip. You see it in sources that discuss the use by what we would call early Christians of these drugs for the sake of the induction of ecstatic states of mania and for the sake of traveling through these interdimensional zones, the uranoi, they call them. Right? And again, people say, does this have anything to do with Mithras? Of course it does, right? It is not just the Mithras liturgy, right? It is the Helios liturgy. It's Helios Mithras in the text. That's why they call it, right, the Mithraic liturgy, because it's Helios Mithras. Anybody who's involved in the cult knows that the granddaughter of Helios is that cup That's the power that the cult produces. Is it Mithraic? Mitra was a female before she was ever a male. And this is exposed within the cult itself. That priestess is going to be giving you her flesh and her blood. Jesus is fighting for dominance in this priesthood, the echidnaic priesthood. We have a text that talks about the specific, there's multiple texts, but the Gospel of Philip is very explicit about everything and why the apostles must fight and destroy this other priesthood, which is the Mithraic, echidnaic priesthood, where the priestess is supplying us with the blood that gives us life.
Okay, and well, I guess I want to go into specifics, like when we say blood, and because I understand that you are saying like this concept of communion, the concept of the cup, and the actual thing you are drinking. Let's say you have to drink it, isn't it? That it will create an effect, that it will be used for some for something that you are trying to, like the effect you are trying to produce on the initiated or in the people that are part of the cult, or So do we know from the text what are we talking about? I mean, is the actual blood, is semen ejaculate from a woman? What is it?
It's okay, you can't ask that as a general question because it's different everywhere. We have different texts that talk about it differently. So you say, is it the semen? Is it the ejaculate? In the Mithraic liturgy, we have a Christing of mysterion. We have a Christing of the mystery itself into the eyes of the person who is being initiated. That act.
I'm sorry, Ammon. And when you say Christing, for us, like everybody to understand, what do you mean? The Christing of something, what that will mean?
So Christing and anointing, you might say, are two different applications in antiquity. Christing is the application of a drug that is involved in things that have to do with toxins and antidotes. So if you are going to treat scorpion envenomation, you're going to use a Christ. You're not going to anoint, you're going to Christ. In the Mithraic liturgy, the drugs are being Christed in a final compound form into the eyes of the initiate so that their eyes can be opened and that they can see. And what can they see? The text is explicit about what they see. Their sight, which is described as the process of being born again. Palingenesis. The process of being born again. The vision that takes place is a standard vision. There are no variations. It's a standard vision. For example, the Virgin. You have to find the Virgin. Right? All of this.
So in the connection with, now that we understand that Christing is the application of a specific, you were talking about before which specific, we know they talk about blood and everything. So can we go back to that specifics and that chemistry? What do we know about that? What are we drinking?
Right. Good luck with the chemistry. So the Mysterion is the name of what is being Christed into the eyes of the initiate in the Greek magical papyri. Okay. That substance, Mysterion, that is being applied to the eyes, the word it uses is ops. And that ops is not just your eyes, but your visual field. So the cult was looking at this as Christing your visual field in order to see the invisible. This is being born again. So the specific drugs that are involved are contained within the Mysterion. Now, this particular text gives a couple of ingredients at its very end that are going to be used in the process. But the Mysterion is not the drug that is the communion drug that initiates. The Mysterion is what is provided by the priesthood. They may use the drugs that you bring, which they do, but they use that as a base for what is the hidden mystery.
Okay, so we can know something, but not all of it, obviously.
You know, I would argue that no, that we can know all of it.
We can.
Yeah, thanks to the physicians who were able to record and save the prescriptions for the Mysterion. And it turns out that there's multiple authors who write about Nero's arch-physician. And of course, Galen does, and we've discussed that before. And Galen has the guy's entire theriac. Okay. But there are other authors who talk about this arch-physician and what he was working on. It is my opinion. No, it's not an opinion. It's a suspicion. I suspect that we have a complete formula for Mysterion. And if we could reproduce that formula, we could reproduce, if we have all the plants and all the different species that are involved, we could reproduce the communion substance that the priesthood was giving. Here's the added difficulty.
We actually could recreate that with the text.
We could. Here's the problem, though. The act of administering the drug is a sexual act. So the transmission, we know that they're using the semen, but the transmission of that semen is that ultimate holy act. So what the body has done to the drugs that are being given to the priests, right? That's part of the equation, in addition to everything that they're using. Because remember, these cults are going around the Bacchanals, for example, with their venoms and their dildos. And they're not swallowing their venoms.
So they were not using semen. Obviously, they were using a female. Like when we talk about like the Bacchanals, and because this is like something what you talked about, seed. Yeah, we can understand that, and communion and the connection with it.
Right. And she still has seed. The female still has seed.
That's what I mean. Yeah, okay. So
right. So when we receive her communion, we receive that life-giving substance. It's not only what her body has produced in that ejaculation, it's also whatever chemicals that they're using on their dildos in the process. What have they given to her over time? And what have they just given her within the rite? You know, all of that chemistry, that's why I say good luck. All of that chemistry together is going to create the mystery. If you don't have her, you don't have the mystery. What does Jesus do when he takes Mary up into the woods with the apostles, the young apostles? What does he do? He tries to get her and the kids to eat his semen. Why? Because he's the Son of God. And we know that his seed is life. Now, that to you, that sounds almost Christian, doesn't it? Like the Son of God, I hear that. But it's not. It's referring, we have texts of the sons of God far earlier that are talking about the powers that they possess from their pharmaceutical knowledge.
So, can we talk about the concept of communion, like the word, the actual word, like communion, where it comes from? Because I've heard about the communion. Everybody has to do his communion when he's a kid. You know, I'm in a Christian country or Catholic country, and I haven't. But all my friends, you know, when they were young, they go to the first communion, isn't it? Like primera comunión. Sí. La primera comunión. So, what we know about what is this communion, like the roots of it?
Yeah, getting beneath the Latin of the word communion, right? You get down to the Greek root of it, which is the fellowship, the koinonia, the fellowship of the two. What is the fellowship that we have? They use the word for intercourse, right? Modern Christians use this term to talk about their groups that will have ice cream socials on the Protestant side. They'll talk about that. Catholics refer to this as the communion, the process itself of receiving the life-giving substance. Remember Jesus, when he gives his semen to the Mary, and the kids won't take it. When he gives it to Mary, he tries to get her to take it. He tells her, this is life. I do this because I'm giving you life. That whole understanding of receiving those seeds, right, is the physics behind the rite. Remember, these are the seeds of life. They will produce something. So if we attune that in our rite, we can create, by receiving that seed, we can be born again.
Okay, so when we talk about the cup of Medea or the cup of the ancient times, we are talking about something that Christianity took like long after, I guess. The concept, isn't it? The cup.
Yeah, the person is the cup because the communion comes through the person and their fellowship. The act of fellowship, the koinonia, that act of coming together, right, is the Greek sunousia, they would say. When two people come together for fellowship, they produce and receive seed. So the very word for communion is in Greek a word for sexual intercourse. Remember, idolatry is sexual activity, right? There is no line between the performance of a religious pagan act in a temple and the act of having intercourse. The priestess is using that power to produce the communion.
Thank you, Ammon. So to keep going, like before, it was a perfect timing, but I'm gonna try to get it again. when we talk about, we skipped a bit about the mother cult, and that came to after when after 800 BC, I guess it is, like when we can have the records about it, and even Roman times. Um, what is this great mother cult? Can you talk about us a bit of the great mother cult, and what is the connection with this, with your book actually? I guess that was the first time I heard about this idea of the eunuch, of the hermaphrodites and female gods, and all of that. So can you talk about us a bit of that? Can you elaborate on this mother cult and this idea?
Yes, and it's a big deal. And how do we know the mother cult from antiquity? You know, because I could just be making jack up. You'd never know. How can you go check on all of this? It's from the ancient sources themselves. The Greek and Latin speaking world that encountered the mother cult. We can go back and we can read what, silly Romans said, right? Oh, God, they have their sensibilities. We're talking about, you can look at authors like Apuleius, Lucian. You can see how did they refer to this kind of Eastern cult from Asia Minor that kind of infiltrates the Mediterranean. And by the first century, the Romans are, crazy about the great mother, Magna Mater's. What are you talking about, man? Magna Mater's everything. Who is she? So look, what do? We look at what they did when they watched the people performing the rites of the great mother. And what it is, it's a lot of magic, a lot of testicles getting ripped off, and a whole bunch of stories, illustrations of the great mother cutting off the private parts of her devotee, her child. She's raising the child. Now, shh, don't tell anyone, because it's kind of not so good today, right? But this is the cult of a beautiful goddess creator who initiates we people, we mortals, into a state of immortality. And she does that through the child, the boy who is coming into his sexual maturity. Right? She has a direct sexual relationship. Now, this is going to blow your mind because you would think, oh, God, let's not talk about great mother and sex in the same breath, or else we're going to be Oedipus. Good God, right? That tension is part of the tension that the Greeks and the Romans both kind of express, not kind of, both express. There is a closeness, there is a change in perspective that creates an intimacy. So we're looking at a religion, a performance that is taking place between the mother and the sexually. It's a process of education, and it's a process of bringing the child to the adult immortality. There's risk involved in all of this, right? And you can lose the person. The lover of the great mother can be lost to the nymph. And you say, what the hell are these people talking about? When you consider what the cult actually does, that the Romans and Greeks report to us, when you see that the young boys who were joining the religion, they don't go to communion like you do in Catholic. They don't go through the steps of hoo-ha and genuflection. No, they have to publicly cut off their testicles and begin to dress like women in order to maintain that sacred relationship with the Great Mother. And you would be smart to listen to them because they have a form of communication that is only possible through the eunuch, right? You're not a eunuch, right? You didn't have you have your testicles, right?
Still, yeah, still.
Okay. You've had them all your life, right? And they've developed who you are. But you would have a different ability if at 10 years old, you and I went to the temple and you got caught up in the festival, the holy day, right? See, the holy day is not when we go eat and sing Merry Christmas to each other. The holy day is when the whole town gets together. We burn these massive drugs in these massive heaps, and we all get incubate. We all infused. We get infused with the power of the goddess, and then some of us come forward and cut off our testicles. That gives us a form of vision that you and I don't have, right? You don't understand who the Great Mother is because your private parts are blocking you from understanding her. So this kind of wisdom, what it ultimately is, and the Romans recognized this, it was providing society with a very disciplined form of respect for that female maternal ideal.
And Ammon, do we have some accounts about these situations that you are talking about that we can go around quickly?
If we didn't have any accounts, I wouldn't be able to tell you that. The best one is in Lucian's De Syria, on the Syrian goddess. Oh, it's horribly written and it's terrible. It's supposed to be Ionian, like heavily Ionian with Dorian influence. God, it's awfully written. Lucian does that on purpose because he's mimicking dialects, right? He's just a good writer, and that's what he does. But if you get beyond that to the content of the Syrian goddess, it's called by Lucian, he has a very distinct description down of the boys cutting off their testicles. I mean, because that's really what matters, right? All the mythology and all the story, none of that matters. What matters is that people are going forward in order to gain an access of a vision to a woman, a mother, and they are cutting off their balls to do that voluntarily, willfully, and then joining her priesthood so that they can dress like her, they can look like her, they can feel like her. And society reacts. And Lucian, when the kid cuts off his testicles, he has to do this. He picks one of the houses in the area. Maybe it's with one of his school chums, throws his testicles into the house, and they splatter against the door, right? Whatever door gets those testicles hit, right? The person comes out, knocks, and there's balls on their door. They know already. They have to take a complete kit, a woman's kit that is female dress, complete set of female dress, and give it to him so that he can enter into their society and he can have that feminine understanding. All of that through a sexual relationship with mom. Do you understand? Oh, God.
Yeah. Oh, God. And Ammon, I think probably Lucian. And probably there was some drugs involved. I mean, if you are going to cut, that was happening in the street, where? In the Lucian account.
This is something that people get wrong about antiquity that I want to correct right now, and I just want people to see it, right? Medea was credited with the first fumigations. What is a fumigation? A fumigation is when you take a compound drug and you aerosolize it, you burn it, and people inhale the fumes and experience changes in attitude, in consciousness, right? All the way from putting somebody to sleep to making them euphoric. This is called a fumigation. Medea is credited with the invention of the fumigation. When you perform religious rites, you fumigate the people involved because that's how you cleanse them. If you're in the wrong state of mind, when you come to church on Sunday morning, you're going to sit there and take that communion. It's just going to taste like a piece of bread with some fucking salt on it or something, right? Oh, God. But if you walk in the church doors and they fumigate you, that communion is going to take on a holy act. It's going to become a holy act. It's putting you in the state of mind. So are they using drugs? I want to correct everybody right now. Yes, a ton through the act of fumigation. Even the Athenian assembly burns cannabis before they meet. They fumigate the crowd with cannabis. Why? It says, we have texts that say, in order to promote a jovial discussion, in order to promote engagement, they fumigate people with cannabis. Imagine if we took one of our senates or Congress or parliaments, imagine if we took them and forced them to smoke cannabis before they met. You take the person and you take them out of the profane and you put them into the sacred. You change their perspective. That's why they called using drugs sitting on the throne. The throne of Satan in Pergamum is not a seat or a chair. And that's what all of these texts, one of the best places to get a lot of this is the Apocrypha too. People don't look at the Apocrypha because they're afraid to, right? You've got it. There's a ton of text out there.
Well, yeah, I guess it's as a bet to do not at all, but like right now you make gathering and you will get some, I don't know, some cocktail or whatever, but it's not the same effect, I guess.
The Scythians practiced cannabis bathing every day, and we don't know for sure that it was just cannabis that they're burning, because it's very rare for people to be able to just burn one plant. Why is that? Because the incense, they called it for incubation, in Greek it's thumiama, right? That incense is always a concoction that they make into little bricks that are then sold and bought in marketplaces. It's so deep in the Greek language, the very oldest, very oldest stuff we got. You go get the incense. You've got to go get the brick. Go to the market, get the brick to do it. Oh, you know who has these? The priests. The priests sell them, especially that priestess in Limnos. You go get her seal, right? I will put it on your head. We will Christ you, and you will be born again. I can do that to you. There's a formula for it in the PGM, in the Mithraic liturgy. If you're a righteous dude, it says that. Bruno, you're righteous, dude. Let's get together and let's see death and life played out all over so we can, you know what I mean? So we can go on with our lives and not always worry about death. The one thing the cult does, it doesn't get membership dues. It doesn't try to run after you to go to ice cream socials. It doesn't try to get you to register to go to walks for pro-life. It doesn't do any of that. What it does is it makes it so that you can walk around for the rest of your life not being afraid of death. That is profound. It's profoundly medical. It's profoundly religious. If you offered me something that would give me the rest of my life not being afraid of death, I would take it in a fucking second.
Me too. I have a good question for you now.
Go ahead.
Well, if you go farther in time from what we're talking about, and we go like to Roman and Jesus' time when he was alive, what is the connection of Jesus?
What is the connection of Jesus to the mystery? He's Christing. Jesus is Christing, just like everybody in the mystery, just like they're doing in the temple, right? Just like the stain that's getting to be on Mary's fingers, the mother of God, right? Who goes through this process, this revelation, where the invisible God, the aoratos, the ion comes to her and rapes her, right? Sorry, but that's part of the deal, right? I told you the virgins are necessary, right? This is all operating against the background of Jesus's life. When he talks about a mystery, or when he says, blessed are the eunuchs, right, for the sake of the kingdom of heaven, those expressions that he's using are not just random shit he pulled out of his head. He's referring to specific acts within the mystery itself. He's using mystery terminology himself. He shows, just from speaking, that he's well versed. So that when he comes to the Garden of Gethsemane and he's praying to the invisible God that we all pray to when we go through the mystery, and saying, let this cup pass. And standing next to him is not a cup, is a naked kid with a bandage on his hoo-ha. Mark 14, 51 and 52. Jesus is using the very same cult language that everybody else is using, that the text preserved for us. He's not the originator of this. He's just a user. He becomes a priest. He gets apostles. He puts them through the rites. The Great Mother was doing the same. It was just a woman, but she was doing the same. She was working with the boys to bring them to maturity through her seed. It was life. So he's doing the same thing. He's performing this mystery. He doesn't deny it, right? When he's executed, right? He doesn't deny any of this laistic practice that they arrested him in the middle of doing. He doesn't deny any of that. Remember, he shuts his mouth. Right? Says, whatever, you said it. Right?
Do we have this? How can we? I know we don't have much time, Ammon, but do we have this in the Bible?
Yes, of course we do. Right? He won't confess as to what's really going on. The only thing he says when he's arrested is, I'm not a trafficker. I'm not a trafficker, right? For whatever reason, he was trying to let them know, I'm not a trafficker, because they killed traffickers. And there were two of them in the Bible that he was killed between. So he was tried with traffickers and killed with traffickers. And in the Bible, his crime is so terrible that a murderer is pardoned instead of him. A murderer. They've got one pardon position. Who do you want to let go? Murderer or this guy that we just got for being a lace-face? You're going to have to get him. He was arrested with a naked kid. Nobody likes that. Julius Caesar didn't like it. Nobody likes it. They're trying to clean this shit up in the 1st century BC and 1st century Anno Domini. They are trying to clean this up in the Mediterranean. It is a struggle. It is a struggle. And unfortunately, the traditions that promote taking captive children, essentially drugging them and then forcing yourself upon them sexually, which, you can consider eating your semen to be an act of rape. All of that world is not possible without the terminology that and the drugs and everything that Jesus is using that you and I look at today and we think very harmlessly, oh, the naked kid, right? That is you ask any bishop, who's the naked kid, right? Fleeing from the garden. And they'll look at it in a way that is totally non-reminiscent of the reality that's in the text. So there are all sorts of examples of Jesus using drugs, Christing, putting people in positions of sexual dominance where he dominates them sexually. Periods of him getting naked. Nobody cares that when he's with the apostles. And can I just say this? The whole world right now, I'm going to wake you up. I'm going to do a magic trick right here at the end. I'm going to wake you up. The whole world thinks Peter and James and John and those apostles, they think they were adult men. They weren't. When Jesus was performing his ministry with his apostles, he had to pay an adult tax himself for people over the age of 20. This is in the Gospels. He had to pay an adult tax, and he insisted that they pay for Peter just in case, because he looks like he could be 20. But then the texts go on and describe all of those kids as juveniles. So it makes sense that Jesus would say, Peter looks like he could be 20, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to pay for him too. But the others, they are just his students. Jesus is not walking around with grown men. He is walking around with children, the youngest of which only rises to his breast when sitting on his lap. That's John, the one he really loved, his favorite. So the Greek is important. We need to read the Greek. We need to get, this is all part of the mystery, and people don't realize it. So we need to get it out there.